Then I asked myself, is there some better way that I can help these cancer patients? And the answer was like studying cancer. And after that, I also realized that the magnitude of suffering for animals is just like unimaginable, and how interconnected all these are. So the question became that even if I really wanted to help humans, I still should promote whole food plant-based diet. So veganism for me was that triple point where environment, health, and animals all came together. And so that's one reason. And the other thing is just because of the magnitude of suffering, I always say there is like rationally, logically, ethically, morally, there is no better cause that one can devote their careers and lives to.
Than animals.
Than animal rights. Show me something that causes more suffering. I will quit what I do today. I will go do that. But you can't.
I think it makes more sense for us as humans to be more interested in the suffering of the human species. We should prioritize the elimination of human suffering, even if the suffering of other animals is much greater. Clearly, we should make a distinction between the organism that suffers and not only consider the intensity of the suffering. This is not because there is any objective difference between the suffering of a human and that of another animal, but because this will allow us to benefit the most from the results. Ultimately, while we want no one to suffer, we most of all want to avoid suffering ourselves.
And that's coming from someone who's seen a lot of suffering personally as well, right? Talk to us about that, because if somebody watching this who doesn't know your background might say, you know, what an obnoxious thing to say. Like, what do you know about, you know, you should think about the humans who are suffering, but you've been there, done that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And all vegans say is that if that pain is unjustified, we should avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah.
I always say, like, if a dog attacks me, I will defend myself, right?
Yeah.
If a bear attacks you, you do what you have to do. So,
yeah.
But
of course, it can be justified. The fact that their meat is tasty is a justification, and I could find hundreds more. You could argue that they aren't fair justifications, but who gets to decide what is and isn't a correct justification? I could say that self-defense is not a valid justification for killing an animal, and you might disagree. So how do we determine what is a valid justification and what isn't? In the end, if I say it is valid, my word has as much power as yours.
The whole idea of veganism is that culture, tradition, tastes good. You know, I love the taste of meat. That's a big misunderstanding. They say vegans are against, you know, why do you care what I like? You know, I love the taste of meat. So yeah, so did I. But I think taste, culture, tradition, religion, convenience, these are just not good enough of a reason to kill an animal when we don't have to.
That's just something you say, but how do you prove that it is not a good enough justification? Probably culture, tradition, and religion are not justifications for almost anything, for the simple reason that in most cases they lack any logical support.
Absolutely, yeah. And what you said about them having different senses.
The other one is people say, yeah, I guess I just don't have any feelings about what happens to animals. And I always tell them, this is actually really powerful because it gets them, it slaps them with reality, because I tell them the only kinds of people who can see what happens to an animal and they just don't have any reaction to it is actual psychos. I'm not saying this sarcastically, like the actual people, the only people who actually have no feeling when they see an animal being slaughtered is actual psychos.
Yeah.
That might actually enjoy that. If you say that you don't have any feelings, it's not because you actually don't, but you know that if you say that, it's either toxic masculinity or you actually like know that if you accept that you have feelings for this, you know what comes next. Because I'm gonna ask you, if you hate this, why do you pay for it? And I was like, don't tell me that if you step on a dog's foot, you're just gonna just leave your foot there and this dog is just like yelping. I was like, what do you do if you step on a dog's foot? And they're like, yeah, I just feel bad. And I'm like, we literally apologize to a dog, thinking that like they can't even like understand our words. That's a reality, right? That's a reality in that guy's life. But when he's talking to me, he says, yeah, I don't have any feelings. Bullshit.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
The vast majority of normal people have feelings for these animals, but just because we were programmed by evolution to have such emotions does not mean that we must also have a rational position that agrees with these emotions. For example, there are people who suffer from the fear of heights. For some reason, these people feel emotions according to which they should not take the elevator. And yet, their rational position is that the elevator is perfectly safe and that they should use it. We are all fooled by optical illusions, but that does not mean that we must also be fooled on a rational level by those illusions and consider them real. There is and must be a great distinction between the irrational emotions we feel and the rational position we have. To think that our primitive instincts and emotions should dictate our rationality is simply wrong. The conclusion being that just because a man has negative emotions about killing animals does not mean that his rational position should also be against it. Even if there were an absolute morality, which there is not, these emotions would still not be a correct indicator. The vast majority of people would agree that it is right to kill one man if by doing so we could save 100,000 people. And yet, emotions would continue to tell us that it is wrong to kill that man, even if we have rationally established that it is right.